Hi, this is Sarita Roche, and today on La Roche Art, we're going to be doing some furniture art. I found this beautiful little side table, and it had great bones, solid wood, all kinds of little sweet details, great hardware, just needed a little bit of love and attention. And so we got to it. We inspected it, we sanded it, we looked for any possible flaws. It was super clean. It just needed to be scuffed up a bit to give it a tooth to hold the paint, but it had lovely details like the legs and the edging. And so what we decided to do was to use a great product. It's from Dixie Belle, and it's called Slick Stick, and it sticks to any slick surface, even glass apparently. Went on super easy. You just need to put a very, very thin coat because it is very, very durable. And so we found that if we put too much, it was hard to sand it down. So we covered the whole piece in the Slick Stick, and then we gave it a really good sanding. I would suggest really paying attention to the sanding. The next product that we used was Roche. This is a new product I'd never used before. It's a paint transformer. It's supposed to transform any latex or acrylic paint into chalk paint. So you take 2 heaping tablespoons of this powder, you mix it up in a container with about 1.5 tablespoons of water, and this is going to give any brand of latex or acrylic paint that great chalk paint quality, which is really fun to use on furniture rehabs. So the first thing you do is you go ahead, like I said, and mix those heaping tablespoons of powder with the water, and you mix that up into a paste. I had this great little whisk, but I also ended up having to use a craft stick to get in the corners. I bought some paint samples from my local hardware store. Flat paint is best, but my hardware store only had satin in the sample size. So I got this blue. This is my inspiration color. I'm going for kind of a peacock theme. And I mixed about 8 ounces of the latex paint with that powder. And I also got a darker midnight blue to kind of accent that original blue. And I just went with some extra jars that I had, and I mixed each color with the recipe for the Roche paint transformer, mixed it up well. In the end, I even shook the jar to really make sure it was all the way mixed in there. And I started painting. I wanted to do a kind of an ombre effect with the darkest blue going down to the teal, and then the legs having that yellow-green, I think it's called like spring meadow, in the bottom. So I just started laying it on. What I found and what I've read with chalk paint is that it's really important to keep it wet. So from Dixie Belle Paint Company, I got their continuous sprayer, which you'll see me use here and there. And I've never seen a sprayer like it before. It sprays an ultra fine mist of water, so you don't get big globs of water on there. And it just keeps the paint super wet, and you're able to blend really well. Now for this first coat, I'm just color blocking. I'm not paying a lot of attention to keeping all the blending perfect. You really just want to get a good, solid, thin first coat onto the furniture piece. And then you can kind of stand back and say, okay, where do I want to change what I've done so far? Do the colors work? Do I need to add different colors? So that's what I'm doing. I'm just putting a really basic first coat all around. And for the most part, I was happy with what I did. What I did notice though was I had to pay extra attention to the brushes I used. Sometimes I got little bristles into the paint, so I had to dig those out. And I also obviously was watching for paint drips, and I wanted to keep the coats thin. More coats are better than one thicker coat. And I had several brushes because I did one brush per color. And I will say that each brush really had a different consistency, and some of them were better than others. Here's this little cute thing that was glued on, and I'm going to keep it, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with that in the next video. So for the top, I wanted it to have the same kind of gradient. So I started in the middle with green, I worked out with the second color of blue, and then I went to the darkest blue. And you'll see why I did it that way, because I do have some really great furniture transfers that I plan to add. So I did sand in between the first and second coats, just with a really fine grit sandpaper, and that really helped to keep it smooth. And you can see here as I'm putting the beginning of my second coat, how much richer and creamier the color is with the second coat. And you can also see me using that Dixie Belle continuous sprayer to really smooth out the colors. This was a really fun project. My daughter was always dancing and singing next to me. My family kept checking in for all the progress because it really became a completely different piece of furniture. It was lovely before, and it had probably been well loved in someone's home, and now it's just turning into something completely different and fun and a little bit outrageous. So as you can see here, I'm finishing up my second coat, and I'm continuing to use the sprayer. Don't neglect to keep that paint wet. I decided to lighten up the top a tiny bit, so I used a little bit of that real bright spring meadow yellow green in the center before I added the teal to really give me the kind of glowing gradient I wanted for the top. As you can see, it had been sanded, that's why it looks all messed up between the first and second coat. And I just really took my time. I spent longer on this than I would have anticipated, but it's because I really wanted the teal and the blue to really merge into each other. And so that just takes time and lots of spraying with that Dixie Belle continuous sprayer. I'm so glad I bought it. It's the first time I've ever used it. So I wanted the top to have a lot of the darkest blue, which I put all along the edging. And I just kept working it back and forth, back and forth. The main thing was working in small areas so that I could keep the paint wet. And so I would just add a little, keep it wet, and then work on merging the two. The drawers, the body, and the legs were all different finishes of wood. And so I had to make adjustments as I was working. This drawer in particular was a little bit glossier than the other drawers. And so I really had to pay attention to my brush strokes. And so I just went along, brushing it, blending it, making sure I got into all the little nooks and crannies, and deciding whether or not I was going to need to sand and do a third coat. But I decided it looked good enough, and I got out my furniture transfer, which you can see here. And it's really simple. You just stick it on, use some painter's tape to adhere it, and then using a brayer or even a little stick, you just rub it, and it just goes right on. And there's lots of parts of the transfer which are transparent. So it's going to show the color of the paint through it. And that just really makes it blend really nice. And then you can put your top coat over it. So I just worked it. I made sure I went over it several times. My son helped me. We wanted to really make sure all of those little wispy parts of the peacock feather adhered. And it was really fun to watch, actually, because we had never used this type of product before, and I was hoping that I wasn't going to mess it up. But I had seen enough videos that said it was very easy and inexpensive, and I have to admit, it was a great option. So we just rub and rub and rub, and eventually we were able to release the transfer, and it came out perfect. The set that I bought came with several different peacocks. So for the top, I wanted a full peacock fan tail, but it had a lot of edges, and I really wanted to make sure that it was rubbed well. So I spent a good deal of time rubbing, probably even more than I needed to. Sometimes I could see the backing actually lift when I rubbed well, but it wasn't always obvious. So as I peeled off the backing, I just watched to make sure that it was actually adhering. And if it wasn't, I went ahead and rubbed some more. And then when I did actually pull the whole thing off, I just rubbed it with my finger to make sure that it really had stuck to the top. And I just love this peacock. It is so pretty. I did one more set of transfers on the other side. This time, instead of using one large peacock feather like I did on the other side, I chose to use two smaller feathers, kind of just, put at angles. I really wanted it to overlap the edge where there's some depth. So it was really easy. I was able to just go around those corners. It stuck like I did with the other one. I just made sure that I braid it very, very well. And then as I was pulling off the backing, I just watched to make sure that it was adhering. And after I had taken off the backing, I just went ahead and rubbed it some more. So here's the transfer kit that I used. I bought it on the Dixie Belle website. I'll put the link for all the products in the description. It had 4 sheets, and each sheet had several different peacock themed items on it. If I really wanted to get crazy, I could have just covered this whole thing in all sorts of transfers. I had to kind of restrain myself, but they're really pretty. They're vibrant. They were easy to apply. And I really like the way that it's looking. So this is the end of part 1 of this video series. I have not finished this cabinet yet, and we will be working on the drawers. I have some decoupage I want to do. I have some gilding wax. So check it out next Friday for part 2. And thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. I really appreciate it. Have a good day and keep making a beautiful mess.